At the beginning of the 20th century, much of the world was under the domination of European colonial powers. However, Europe itself was experiencing intense political tension and chaos. Specifically, the rise of the German Empire, in terms of industry and military power, had a direct impact on the position of the British Empire, the reigning global superpower. Despite having fewer colonies than Britain and France, Germany, along with Austria-Hungary and Italy, they formed the Central Powers Alliance to compete for colonies and global markets. In response, Britain, France, and Russia formed the Allied Powers, leading to the formation of two opposing military blocs in Europe. Both sides engaged in an arms race and prepared for war, a conflict among empires seeking to redistribute colonies worldwide. War was seen as inevitable, and even a minor clash could ignite a full-scale global conflict. In June 1914, the assassination of the Archduke of Austria-Hungary by a Serbian nationalist organization shook the world. This event angered Austria-Hungary, which declared war on Serbia. As Serbia was Russia's ally, Russia declared war on Austria-Hungary. Germany, aligned with Austria-Hungary, consequently declared war on both Russia and France. France had fortified positions and strong defensive lines along its borders with Germany, and Germany did not want to waste time attacking them directly. Therefore, Germany decided to bypass these fortifications by initiating a campaign against Belgium and Luxembourg, aiming to penetrate deep into French territory. In response, Britain couldn't stand idly by and declared war on Germany, sending troops to the continent. On the Eastern Front, Russia invaded Austria-Hungary, but was blocked by German forces. In the Middle East, the Ottoman Empire, known as the Central Powers, officially joined the war and surprised everyone by using its navy to bombard the coastal regions of the Russian Empire. This large-scale conflict among major colonial powers was dubbed the War to End All Wars by the media of that time due to its immense scale and devastating destruction. It gave rise to the development of tanks, submarines, airplanes, machine guns, and chemical weapons, completely changing the landscape and nature of warfare compared to previous conflicts. Returning to the Western Front, the German forces achieved continuous victories and advanced close to the capital of France. At this point, everyone believed that Germany would win the war soon, until the French commander-in-chief ordered a halt to the retreat and initiated a counteroffensive. This forced the German forces to withdraw and dig trenches, turning the situation into a defensive one. The Allied forces also adopted a similar strategy, and thus began the trench warfare. The opposing trenches formed a deadly no-man's land in between, and both sides would exchange hundreds of artillery shells for days on end. This had a significant psychological impact, causing many soldiers to suffer from shell shock. When the time was right, troops would abandon their trenches and charge through the no-man's land, traversing muddy and waterlogged craters filled with the remnants of explosions and barbed wire. At this point, machine guns became highly effective defensive weapons. Continuous attacks would push the enemy out until they either surrendered or their trenches were captured. The soldiers would engage in relentless combat for months, with thousands losing their lives for the sake of capturing a few kilometers of land. Life in the trenches was extremely harsh, with dead bodies, mud, stagnant water, rats, foul odors, and diseases everywhere. Millions of soldiers endured such unimaginable conditions for several years. But there were moments of miraculous ceasefire during Christmas Eve. Initially, German soldiers began singing Christmas carols, which the British soldiers heard and joined in, harmonizing together. Then, all weapons were laid down, and they stepped out of the trenches to enjoy a rare moment of Christmas with the enemy soldiers. They played football together, took photographs, shared breakfast, and exchanged gifts such as cigarettes, uniforms, and food. The next day, they bid each other farewell, shook hands, and returned to their respective trenches, resuming their hostile positions as before. In 1915, Italy abandoned the Central Powers and joined the Allied powers, launching an offensive in the north. Similar to other countries, the Italian forces became trapped and stuck in a stalemate throughout the war. On the Eastern Front, the Ottoman forces attempted to attack Russia in the Caucasus Mountains. However, they underestimated the harsh winter conditions, resulting in many soldiers freezing to death. They also tried to cross Egypt's desert to capture the Suez Canal from the British, but faced further defeats. Meanwhile, the Allied forces launched an unsuccessful campaign to capture Gallipoli on the trench warfare front. At this point, Austria-Hungary had not resolved its conflict with Serbia, so the Central Powers brought Bulgaria into the war. Together, they defeated Serbia, forcing the Serbian army to retreat by sea. In 1916, Germany realized the need to break the deadlock on the Western Front. They conducted air raids using Zeppelins on British cities and attacked the Allied trenches with chlorine gas. They also employed submarines to sink civilian fishing boats, including American vessels, resulting in the deaths of 159 Americans. During this time, the only naval battle of the war occurred, with both sides deploying a powerful new armored battleship called the Dreadnought. However, the high cost of building these ships led to a tactical stalemate, as neither side wanted to risk losing them in battle. The German army then launched a bloody campaign in the city of Verdun, France. The French forces fiercely defended the city, resulting in hundreds of thousands of casualties. Under the pressure from the French resistance, the Allies needed to divert Germany's attention elsewhere. Consequently, the British Army engaged in a prolonged and fierce battle along the River Somme, with over 60,000 British soldiers being casualties on the first day alone. It was during this battle that the British first utilized tanks to counter the overwhelming firepower of German machine guns. However, the battle yielded no significant results and inflicted devastating losses on both sides, costing hundreds of thousands of lives. Additionally, the British imposed a naval blockade that cut off Germany's access to the sea and prevented the importation of food supplies. In the Middle East, Arab rebels rose up in the desert and disrupted transportation routes to the Ottoman Empire by 1917. It seemed that all resources had been depleted, particularly in Russia, where the war had left the country exhausted and in crisis. This led to strikes by workers and widespread civil unrest, which eventually escalated into a large-scale revolution. A new government was established, overthrowing the Russian monarchy. A few months later, the Bolshevik Party overthrew the new government and formed the Soviet Union, and Russia officially withdrew from the World War. The United States, as a supplier of weapons and goods, became immensely wealthy during the war by supporting the Allied forces. This made it a potential threat to Germany. Furthermore, when Germany sent a telegram to Mexico urging them to attack the United States, British intelligence intercepted and deciphered the message. They then passed it on to the United States. The United States, having run out of patience and declared war, millions of American troops poured into Europe alongside the Allied forces, launching a comprehensive counteroffensive. The German forces suffered successive defeats and were pushed back on all fronts by the Allied coalition. The Ottoman Empire, Austro-Hungarian Empire, and Bulgaria collapsed one after another. Germany, completely exhausted, surrendered at 11 a.m. on November 11, 1918. The Treaty of Versailles was subsequently signed, which required the defeated countries to pay enormous reparations to the victorious nations. Additionally, the map of Europe was redrawn. The war resulted in over 17 million fatalities and over 20 million soldiers wounded. The cities, villages, roads, bridges, and factories were destroyed. The cost of the war for participating countries amounted to around $85 billion. Besides the devastating impact on human lives, economy, and infrastructure, it also instilled long-lasting psychological horror throughout Europe, resulting in a lost generation. This very war caused Europe to decline and lose its role as a leader of human civilization, a role it had held for over 300 years, gradually shifting that role across the Atlantic to the United States. No European country truly emerged as a winner from this war. All suffered heavy human and material losses. In the aftermath of the war, The world established the United Nations, and a strong global peace movement flourished for about 20 years until the outbreak of World War II.